This is Jean-Francois. He's a community health worker and one of my colleagues when I was working in Central African Republic. We were running a pediatric malnutrition and malaria program in a very remote village, one with no electricity, no running water, and definitely no banks. And so at the end of the month, when I had to pay Jean-Francois and his 200 other teammates, I had to do it in cash. The amount of time I spent hand counting stacks of bills was unbelievable. And so a couple years later, when I learned about Bitcoin, I was so excited about the potential this technology was going to have on humanitarian operations to make them much more efficient. We would be able to send money from our European offices directly to the cell phones of our staff in the field. I was never going to have to count another bill again. But the moment I truly began to appreciate the potential of Bitcoin was when I realized it wasn't about efficiency. I want you to think for a moment. How do you get enough cash to pay 200 salaries to the middle of Central Africa? Every day, humanitarian field workers carry knapsacks full of money through jungles, towns, military checkpoints, and war zones. For me, Bitcoin was about human lives. The lives of the people who put themselves at risk of being robbed or kidnapped, all to ensure that people could access the medical care that they needed wherever they needed it. Tonight, I'm changing the narrative around Bitcoin and blockchain technology because it's not really about money. It's about freedom. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, "Recognition of equal and inalienable rights is the foundation of freedom." Bitcoin is the world's most popular cryptocurrency, with more than 28 million users worldwide. You can kind of think about it like digital gold, except it's built using cryptography and algorithms that ensure that it can't be manipulated by corrupt governments or people with undue influence. Bitcoin gives individuals complete control over their money, so you can send it to anyone, anywhere in the world, without the need to go through a central party like a bank or a money transfer service. This is possible because it's built using blockchain technology. A blockchain is really just a global record of transactions. And there are many different blockchains out there. But when you look at the most basic one, the Bitcoin blockchain, it has 3 key properties to remember. First, it's public, which means that any person can verify that a transaction happened as it was supposed to. Second, it's immutable, which means that once a transaction has been made, it can't be altered. And third, and most importantly, it's decentralized, which means it isn't owned or managed by any one government or corporation. Asking who owns Bitcoin is kind of like asking who owns English. It's owned and managed by all the people who use it every day. Now, a copy of the blockchain is stored on thousands of individual computers all across the globe. And this means that if somebody wanted to hack into this record of transactions, they would have to do it on at least half of these computers at exactly the same time, making a blockchain virtually impossible to hack. This means that every transaction and every record stored in blockchain is trustworthy without having the need for a government or an organization to provide that trust. And so, a blockchain is a single source of truth for every person on the planet. And as the saying goes, when you know the truth will set you free. Article 23. Everyone who works has the right to remuneration, ensuring an existence worthy of human dignity. In Venezuela right now, 9 out of 10 people are living in poverty. And it's not because they don't have money. It's because their money isn't worth anything anymore. The inflation rate has already hit more than 40,000%. So if you had $1 million in 2013 and you used it to buy Venezuelan bolívares, today you would only have enough left for $3.40. In fact, the average worker in Venezuela making the median wage will only have enough money at the end of their workday to buy 900 calories of the cheapest food available. 900 calories. If they wanted more nutritious food, they'd have enough money to buy 2 eggs. 2 eggs is not an existence worthy of human dignity. And their situation is about to get worse. The International Monetary Fund expects that the inflation rate will hit more than 1,000,000% by the end of the year. Now, the people of Venezuela know what that's like. In 2008, their inflation rate hit more than 86 billion%. People were seen going to the market with wheelbarrows full of cash to buy bread. Salaries became meaningless. Schools and hospitals shut down. The country was in collapse. The people of Venezuela aren't waiting around for that to happen. Bitcoin sales have exploded because for the first time ever, people have the freedom to choose a financial system that isn't run by government, a store of value that isn't going to be inflated away by bad monetary policy, and the choice to use a currency that can be transported and used anywhere in the world. And that's exactly where they're taking it. More than 10% of the country has already fled this year. It's more than 3 million people. This is quickly becoming a migration of Syrian proportions. Article 14. Everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. I want you to imagine that you're living in Syria. The fighting in your town is intensifying, and you make the very difficult decision to leave your home and everything you've built, to take your children and run. The journey is long, and you arrive with nothing but the clothes on your back to a place like this. This is the Zaatari refugee camp in Jordan, home to more than 80,000 Syrian refugees. Around the world, there are more than 68 million refugees and displaced people living in camps just like this one. And they're living there not for days or weeks, but for months, years, and even generations. This is often because people lack the basic identity documents they need to get processed into a new home country. In fact, more than 70% of refugees don't have basic identity documentation, leading to a crisis where millions of eligible people are left in limbo simply because they can't prove who they are and where they came from. Blockchain enables you as a human being to own your identity instead of being granted one by a government or a corporation. Instead of having your identity live in a government database or a paper file folder somewhere, it's created directly on a blockchain, and only you can grant access to that information. Now, granting that access is as easy as putting your fingerprint into a phone, or perhaps putting a passphrase into a phone. This type of system is going to enable refugees the freedom to seek asylum and to keep their families safe. Now, many refugees decide to bypass the camps altogether and make the long journey to asylum on foot, often with little or no support at all. Now, sometimes aid organizations will set up medical clinics along well-known migrant routes. They're often from very different organizations, and so a patient who's going from one to another will find that the clinics are very disconnected, and so is the care. But by linking a medical record to your decentralized ID means that you can open access to your health information to different doctors along your route, ensuring that they're able to provide you with a better continuity of care and subsequently much better health outcomes. Now, IDs and medical records are just the beginning of some of the records that refugees and other people around the world are lacking. Article 17, everyone has the right to own property. In January of 2010, more than 200,000 people were killed in Haiti when an earthquake leveled the country. Several years later, much of the country lay still in ruin, not because there wasn't the will or the money to rebuild, but many of the government buildings were also destroyed, along with the land record titles that were held within them. People couldn't rebuild because they couldn't prove that they owned the land that they had lived on. Major infrastructure projects were delayed or moved to places that had much less need. More than 70% of people around the world lack a land title for the land that they rightfully own. And this is a huge issue because essentially it forces people away from some of the most basic tools that provide financial mobility, things like small business loans that require collateral. In Kenya, the issue is different. Some people are forced off of their land, even if they have a title, because corrupt government officials will work with the cartels to create a duplicate title system, ensuring that people can't ever have a guarantee that they own the land that they own. India, Honduras, and Sweden are just 3 of the countries that are trialing blockchain-based systems. Because the information is stored decentrally, it can be accessed from anywhere in the world and can't get lost or stolen. And, most importantly, because these records can't be duplicated, people can never be kicked off of land that they rightfully own. It's going to help them be less susceptible to corruption, which is critically important because for most people, they don't have the freedom to speak out against corruption without putting their lives at risk. Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This is Tahrir Square in Cairo, Egypt. In January of 2011, more than 2 million people assembled to protest the actions of their government and President Mubarak. They'd been accused of human rights abuses, corruption, and trying to stop freedom of speech. Now, coming to a public square like this is dangerous. In this instant, more than 1,000 people were killed. Now, the internet has created a digital public square, a place where people can voice their opinions about their government with much less risk to their physical safety. In fact, that protest was started by a number of online youth groups and continued through social media. But countries like Turkey and Pakistan have actually tried to stop protests by shutting down social media. And this is possible because the messages are sent through centralized servers organized by centralized companies. Now, with blockchain, if you had a social media site that looked and felt just the same, but the messages were sent across those thousands of computers all over the world, the site couldn't be shut down. The government could not turn off the voice of its people. Now, Egypt took this one step further and actually shut off the internet. And this was possible because many of the on-ramps to the internet are also centralized. But blockchain can help with this too. As long as one individual has access to a connection, possibly through a satellite, they can send data to and through the people around them, kind of like a game of broken telephone, but one where the message isn't broken. Anyone who supports this system by sending messages and data through will get a micropayment of cryptocurrency for their support. This is a map of the legal status of Bitcoin around the world. And this is a map of the Global Freedom Index. It's pretty easy to see the correlation. Governments that have a lot to lose by providing their citizens with freedom are trying to do anything they can to stop this technology. But the good news is that this technology can't be stopped. Blockchain is going to give the freedom to the people whose governments refuse to allow it. So tonight, I'm changing the narrative around Bitcoin and blockchain technology, but you can be a part of the story. I'm asking you to stand in solidarity with people around the world who don't have the same access to freedom as we do here in Canada, to participate in a technology that is going to transform the lives of the vast majority of people on our planet. And the good news for you is it's as easy as taking out your cell phone, downloading an app, and buying $1 worth of Bitcoin. Because the reality is, it's not about money or land titles or getting medical care. It's about protecting the right to freedom. Thank you.